In a Swedish parish graveyard stands a slab of granite, 2.5 meters tall, carved with 760 runes, 5 rune systems, 2 of them encrypted. It is the longest Viking inscription in existence. It has stood in open daylight for 1,200 years, and the upper rows have never been fully read. 3 centuries before this stone was carved, the sun failed. For 18 months across the northern hemisphere, from the year 536, the sun gave light without warmth. Crops did not ripen. Livestock died in the open. Tree ring records across northern Europe show the years that did not happen. Populations collapsed. In Scandinavia, by some scholarly estimates, half the people died. In 1843, the parish at Rök was given custodianship of the stone. For 175 years, under Church of Sweden authority, its content was officially read as a father's grief poem for a dead son. In 2018, a scholar in Uppsala, Bo Greslund, asked the question nobody had been authorized to ask. This is what he asked. The stone at Rök is granite. It is colder than bone in February. One face is sheltered, and after 12 centuries, the carvings on that face are still crisp enough to draw blood from a fingertip pressed too hard against an edge. The other face, the weathered one, has been giving its lines back to the rain since before Christianity reached this part of Sweden. The upper 4 rows are written in cipher, not the younger Futhark that any literate Viking carver would have known. 2 distinct cipher systems, layered. Beneath them, the long body of the inscription runs in dense vertical lines. 5 rune systems on 1 stone. Only one of them was in common use. An Old Norse fragment read aloud, Sakum muk mini, thathwariar valrobar, varin twar thar. Translated, let us say this memory. Which were the 2 war spoils taken 12 times? That is the line scholars agreed on. Östergötland, around the year 800. The light is iron-colored. Frost has been on the granite for weeks. It has not lifted, even at noon. A man stands in front of the stone with a chisel in his right hand and a smaller iron in his left. We do not know his face. We know his name, Varin. He carved it into the inscription in clear runes. He is not making a list. He is not making a record. He is making a memory, dense enough to survive him. He starts in the plain runic alphabet that anyone in his village can read. Then, partway down, he switches. Cipher rows. Numerical substitutions. Older runic forms used by no one in living memory. By the time he reaches the bottom face of the stone, he is writing in code that will not be opened for 1,100 years. He works through winter. We know this from the depth of the cuts. Granite is harder to carve when it is cold, and the cuts are deep. He never explains why. The Vikings had a name for the end of the world. They called it Ragnarök, the doom of the gods. And they said it would be preceded by Fimbulvetr, the mighty winter. 3 years of cold without summer between them. The sun darkened, the sea risen, brother turning against brother. For a long time, scholars treated Fimbulvetr the way scholars treat most mythological cosmologies, as metaphor, as theological scaffolding, as the kind of thing pre-Christian peoples invented to explain the existence of suffering. And then, in the late 20th century, the climate scientists arrived. In Greenland ice cores, in Irish bog oak rings, in sediment layers from Scandinavia to the Mediterranean. The same year, the same gap, the same 18 months of dimmed sun. The Vikings had a name for it 300 years before any modern instrument could read it. And the question that began to follow, quietly, then less quietly, was this: what if the myth was a memory? To understand what the stone was misread as, you have to understand what it plainly says first. The inscription names a man, Verin. He is the carver. He calls himself the Father, and he gives a second name, Valmother, and the word that means my dead son. This part has never been disputed. A man named Verin buried his son and chose to mark the loss not with a grave mound and a few runes, but with the longest carved inscription anyone in Viking Age Scandinavia had ever attempted. 760 characters, months of work, granite chosen, dressed, placed. You feel it in your wrists first. Granite in winter, chisel edge pressed through leather, the carving hand going numb every 7 or 8 strokes. Verin worked that way for months. The sources suggest he worked alone. Imagine the parish office in 1843. A small room, candle-lit. Stone walls thick enough to keep the cold of November out for an hour after the fire dies. A man in clerical black is writing in a ledger. In front of him, on a folded sheet, is the field recorder's transcription of the Rök inscription. Hundreds of runes in 5 different systems, copied by hand from a stone he has not personally seen. The ledger entry he is writing is 1 line long. He writes, commemorative poetry, probably mid-9th century, likely a father's lament for a son lost in battle. He blots the ink. He closes the ledger. He has not done anything wrong. He has done what every scholar of his generation would have done with a stone whose surface mentions a son's name. He has read the surface. He has filed the conclusion. He has gone home for supper. The ledger entry will hold for 175 years. In 1878, a Norwegian philologist named Sophus Bugge published his major reading of the Rök inscription. His translation built outward from Verin and Valmother, the named father, the named dead son, and read the rest of the stone as heroic memorial poetry, allusions to legendary kings, riddles for the educated dead, the kind of grand commemorative gesture a wealthy Viking Age father might make for an heir lost too young. Bugge's reading was brilliant. It was also early. He was working before most of the climate science that would later matter even existed as a discipline. 80 years later, in 1958, Elias Vesain published the standard scholarly edition of the inscription. He largely accepted Bugge's interpretive frame. He refined the philology, tightened the readings of individual runes, and produced the reference text that would sit on every relevant library shelf in Scandinavia for the next 60 years. And there, the reading locked. This is the texture of how a misreading survives. Not because anyone hides the stone. The stone is in open daylight. School groups visit it. Photographs of it appear in textbooks. The Swedish National Runestone Catalogue, Rundata, lists it as ÖG 136 with full transcription. It survives because the reading was authoritative, and the next generation of philologists trained on the authoritative reading. And the generation after that cited Vesain the way you cite something you no longer feel obliged to verify. 175 years of Sundays in the churchyard. 175 years of school children on field trips listening to the parish guide explain that this was a father's lament. 175 years of nobody asking what the upper rose actually said, until one scholar looked again. In 2018, Bo Gräslund, emeritus professor of archaeology at Uppsala University, published a paper in the peer-reviewed journal Fornvännen, volume 113. Its title was Fimbulwinter, Ragnarok, and Climate Deviation. Gräslund argued that the upper rows of the Rök stone, the encrypted ones, the rows Bugge had read as heroic riddles and Vessain had refined as commemorative cipher, were not memorials to legendary kings. They were a memorial to a winter. Specifically, the 18-month winter that had broken civilizations across the northern hemisphere 3 centuries before Verin put chisel to stone. The winter the sun failed. Gräslund's argument required something difficult. It required accepting that a Viking Age population could hold a memory 300 years long, passed orally through generations, encoded into mythological language, and finally carved by a man whose son, the paper suggested, may have died in some smaller, local echo of that same atmospheric pattern. To understand whether that memory could have survived, you have to understand what it was a memory of. A farmstead in what will one day be called Sweden, late spring of the year that has no spring. The sun is up. The sun has been up for hours. It has not warmed the ground. A woman is standing at the edge of a barley field. The shoots are an inch high and the wrong color, pale, almost gray, as if the green has been drained out of them by something the eye cannot see. She's been measuring the grain stores every 7 days. She knows what they will hold, and she knows when they will not. Her child asks her, in a question we will never recover, why it is not warm. She does not know the answer. She does not know that 2 volcanoes she will never hear of have put a veil between her field and the sun. She does not know it will last another summer. She does not know that as many as 1 in 3 of the people in her valley will be in the ground before the second winter ends. She knows only that the sky is wrong, and that the gods have begun something they have not named. 3 centuries later, a man named Varin will carve what they finally named it. In Constantinople, a Byzantine historian named Procopius was writing a history of the wars of his age. In the year 536, he made the following entry. And it came about during this year that a most dread portent took place. For the sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon, during this whole year, and it seemed exceedingly like the sun in eclipse, for the beams it shed were not clear, nor such as it is accustomed to shed. 2 years later, in Italy, a Roman senator named Cassiodorus wrote a letter that survived. He recorded the same observation in different words. The sun seems to have lost his wonted light and appears of a bluish color. We marvel to see no shadows of our bodies at noon, to feel the mighty vigor of the sun's heat wasted into feebleness, and the phenomena which accompany an eclipse prolonged through almost a whole year. 2 documented eyewitnesses, 2 languages, independently. You cannot see your own shadow at noon. The sun is there, the color of watered ink. Your skin does not feel it. The air does not move. And it has been 18 months. Modern science arrived at the same year by separate routes. Tree rings across northern Europe, Irish bog oaks, Scandinavian pines, Anatolian junipers, show a near vertical compression of growth in 536 and the years immediately after. Greenland ice cores recovered in the 1990s and refined in the 2010s show sulfate spikes consistent with 2 enormous volcanic events, the first in 536, the second in 540, layering a dust veil across the upper atmosphere that persisted for years. The cause was volcanic. The effect was Fimbulvetter. There is a name for what happened. It is recent. The The climate scientists who reconstructed the full extent of the catastrophe, the 124 years of temperature suppression that followed, the cascade of failed harvests, the recoveries that never quite recovered, gave it a name in 2016. They called it the Late Antique Little Ice Age. 124 years of planetary winter. It did not have a name for 15 centuries. The pattern, you will notice, is not unique to runestones. In Scandinavia, the consequences were severe. Settlement pattern studies suggest that between a third and a half of the population may have died in the years that followed. Whole farmsteads were abandoned. The archaeological record shows a sharp decline in trade, in metalwork, in the basic infrastructure of settled life. By the time the climate stabilized, the world that had existed before the darkness was gone. We have one more piece of evidence, from the ground itself. In 1999, the Danish archaeologist Morten Axbo published a study of gold hoards across Scandinavia, large deposits deliberately buried, with no markers for retrieval, not hidden for safekeeping, sacrificed. Axbo linked their timing to the years following 536, an entire ruling class across a vast region reaching the same desperate conclusion, that the only remaining offering was everything they owned, given to the ground, to ask the sun to return. When archaeologists find those hoards today, they are not finding treasure. They are finding prayers. Graslund and his colleague Neil Price added one more observation. Before 536, the sun symbol appears across Scandinavian carved art for generations. After the 6th century, it stops. The Norse, the people who would 3 centuries later carve a memory into granite, could no longer bring themselves to depict the thing they had watched fail. And then, 300 years after that, Varin carved his stone. If Graslund is right, the stone was not remembering a man. It was remembering a world. Graslund's reading is now in print. Other Norse scholars have engaged with it. Some accept the catastrophe memory interpretation. Some retain the older heroic memorial reading. The argument continues. This is what scholarship looks like when it is working. But there is a detail that does not appear on the standard timeline. Access to the stone for the kind of close, comparative, photogrammetric work Graslund's argument required was not freely available. The acknowledgements page of his 2018 paper documents that on-site research access was constrained. It opened in 2016. This is the third layer of the silence. The custodial layer in 1843, the academic layer in 1878 and 1958, and the access layer, quieter, harder to see, that did not end until 2 years before the catastrophe memory reading was published. 175 years of Sundays in the churchyard. 175 years of school children on field trips. 175 years of the parish guide explaining that this was a father's lament. The stone was not hidden. It stood in open daylight. It was photographed. It was catalogued. It was cited. And for 175 years, under 3 layers of inherited authority, ecclesiastical, academic, and access administrative, its most catastrophic content was filed under the wrong heading. This is the rarer form of erasure, not the buried text, not the locked vault. The monument left standing, with its real content unread. Loop 1. The upper cipher rows. We can read most of them now. There is still a section that scholars argue over. Language too compressed, ciphers too layered, context too narrow. Some of what Varin encoded is, 11 centuries later, still encoded. Loop 2. The 18 months of darkness. We know what it was. 2 volcanic events, 4 years apart. We know roughly how many died. We know which cultures bent under the weight of it and which broke. The Norse named it Fimbulvetr. They were the only people who gave it a name they meant. Loop 3. The 175 years of silence. We can date it now. We can name the institutions that maintained it. And we can say, with the calm a working historian uses, that institutional consensus is not the same thing as truth, and that the difference between the two can take several human lifetimes to surface. There is a sister story to this one. The year the sun failed, told from the Mediterranean. Vadin's stone is still there. It is colder than bone in February, and the upper rows still keep some of what he carved. It is the longest Viking inscription in existence. It has stood in open daylight for 1,200 years, and it is not finished being read. There are more stones standing in open daylight, with their content still unread. Subscribe if you want to walk to the next one with me.